Hey there, young grasshoppers, ninjas and ninjets, and fellow senseis alike, and welcome back to the Optimize Self Show, or at least sort of, kind of. You see, if you're watching this episode, well, you know, I've been on kind of a temporary hiatus as I work on some super secret ninja stuff or missions, as is more accurate, in the background. And I have a lot of fun stuff that's going to be coming up in the near future that I'm going to be sharing with you. If this is your first time watching the show, or as in some cases, and today being an example of that, just listening in, because you won't see me today, but you'll hear me. If this is your first time listening or watching or consuming any of the content on the Optimize Self Show, well, then you have most certainly picked a kind of an awkward time to come in. Don't worry, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening. It's just very in this kind of puberty stage, just awkward, gangly kind of, we're morphing into this cool, weird thing, but yeah, growing pains, I guess, could sum that up. Anyways, though, in a nutshell, what the show is about is helping people rediscover their health, upgrade their fitness, and optimize their wellness, all while having fun, kicking ass through lifestyle design. And those two last words are key: lifestyle design. So we're not just focusing on exercise or diet, like that. We're kind of zooming out and looking at your overall lifestyle from a more kind of zoomed out, holistic perspective. And probably the most important truth that we subscribe to here on the show, and that I want you to kind of keep in your mind and just lock down and mull over for a while, is that the human body is a stimulus response organism that's responding to stimulus 24/7 without prejudice. So it's what you do the majority of the time that matters the most, not your best intentions. All right, so just keep that in mind. If you didn't get that all the way through, that's what's great about YouTube, is you can rewind and repeat and everything, and learning anything new is about repetition and total immersion. But also, I'm making this episode, it's kind of a half episode. As you can see, it's 44 and a half. For a number of reasons. One is I have a tough time staying away from people and interacting with them. I just love doing this so much that actually in the temporary hiatus that we've been on, I've actually started doing what I first called thinking out loud. It was a kind of a segment that each morning when I wake up, I do what I lightheartedly refer to as a strategic screwing around. It's consuming various forms of content in different formats, podcasts, YouTube videos, blogs, et cetera, et cetera. I'm always taking down notes and everything, but I thought, because I usually talk my wife's ear and head off to that point, to that extent. And a lot of times when friends or family around, I talk to them, they said, yeah, you should really write this down and record this. And I thought, all right, you know what? I'm going to start doing that on YouTube live events and share it with my fellow dojo members. If you don't know what the Optimize Self Dojo is, we'll get into that later. Don't worry about it. And so I started doing that, and it's great. And basically what it is kind of a running commentary, a random stream of consciousness of the thoughts, as I kind of jokingly say, what the voices say in my head in the morning. And it's been really good for many reasons. But what it's made me realize is that I want kind of version 2.0 of the Optimize Self Show to be much more off the top of my head, not as much outline. I mean, I was never reading from a script before, unless I was reading something and I said, hey, I'm actually reading this. But it was a lot more outline, bullet points and everything. And now if someone has questions, I just want to be like, hey, here's the question, and here's it off the top of my head. I didn't really do too much thinking or planning on this beforehand. This is how I would respond as if you and I were having this conversation in person, face to face. And I hope that in the future, people will actually join me on the calls for, if not face to face, audio to face or audio to audio calls. And that way we can interact with one another in real time, just like a real conversation. Because I'm a big fan of, if I'm pronouncing the constructivism philosophy of education, where basically just taking, two or more minds with different knowledge and experience, put them together and exchanging ideals through conversation. I think that's key for learning anything. So today's episode is kind of a teaser to what's to come, a lighter, lighthearted, friendlier, hopefully funnier, entertaining. I didn't think the ones before that were boring, but just kind of more living room style type of show. Usually by this time I would have said, hey, here's the things we're going to talk about, and then let's kind of stop to plug the Optimize Self Dojo. I'm not going to do that anymore. Hopefully you guys know about the Optimize Self Dojo, and if not, I will sprinkle mentions of it in when I feel it's appropriate. There's not going to be this show brought to you by the Optimize Self Dojo, and here's why you should join. At your convenience. You can go to optimizeself.ninja and find out everything that's included in the dojo. I don't have to tell you that every single episode, but when something is applicable, I will mention it and say, hey, so-and-so from the dojo who we're answering their question is benefiting from this that's found that you get as part of a membership to the dojo. Or, oh, this person who's not a part of the dojo, I can answer your question up to this point, but really after that, it's outside of the scope of this one episode. So I recommend you join the dojo because here's what you get inside, and this is what specifically will help you for your unique situation or problem or whatever you're currently struggling with. All right, so that is about it. The other reason I wanted to make today's show, and this is actually very spur of the moment. I literally, I don't even know if it was an hour ago, I decided I'm gonna do a record. I'm gonna do a show today. Very much off the top of my head. And that is to answer a fairly new member to the dojo, Daniel, question, actually an Optimize Self test response that he sent in a while ago. And actually, I want to apologize to Daniel for taking so long to respond. The only thing that made me make the connection was he actually posted something in the Optimize Self Dojo private Facebook group. And I was like, wait a second, is this the same guy? And I'm 99% sure that it is. So both to Daniel and anyone who have ever taken longer than I'd say 3 days or more to get back to, I apologize. Definitely my head has been in the virtual books, so to speak, and studying, researching, and creating. Another reason I'm not on video right now is because I haven't shaven in a long time. I look like, I don't know, some just crazy, I don't even know how to say it, but I'm just kind of a mess. I definitely have to shave and cut my hair and everything. It's just my head's been so into working on some behind the scenes stuff for dojo members, a new email autoresponder series, the Optimize Self Truths. Yeah, just a lot of stuff, a lot of awesome material that's going to benefit you guys. So been having fun at that, but I have to admit, sometimes I've let messages kind of, fall through the cracks. It happens, I get a slew of Facebook messages and emails and questions and everything, also from my last business, thepostureguy.com. So I get a lot of them. I try to get back to them as quickly as possible. But, I always tell people, and I appreciate Daniel did this. He wasn't instructed to, but he did this on his own accord. So kudos and bravo to Daniel. He filled out the test. I didn't see it for a while because I thought I actually had shut it down. But he found it through the dojo. So awesome. And then he posts this thing in the Facebook group. So I was like, okay, that's great. But if anybody doesn't hear from me for more than about three or 4 days, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's probably because I didn't see your message, or for whatever reason I saw it and I didn't mark it as to come back to. So by all means, reach out either the same way you tried to contact me before or a different way, maybe not email, but Facebook or something, and go ahead and pester me and be like, and you just be like, hey, I sent you this 3 or 4 days ago. Did you get it? Just want to make sure, because sometimes, like I said, things fall through the crack and I need a little poking, prodding, or just simply reminding. So I wanted to today really just focus on answering Daniel's question and his answers that he submitted to the Optimize Self test. This is something I used to offer for free. Now I offer it to strictly just to dojo members. And the reason being is because I found that I think it was a bit premature for people who were not yet in the dojo, that hadn't yet gone through some of the steps and learned some of the things in there. So that's simply why I moved that over to the dojo. And now you can actually get access to the Optimize Self Truths instead of the Optimize Self test. So, and that'll help you prepare you to ask better quality questions, because I definitely believe that the quality of the questions one asks themselves and others kind of dictates the quality of the answers they get, and the better, of course, the answers, the better, more progress someone will make, the better results they get. So with that said, I really just want to get into, I'm so excited just to be doing a show, even though it's kind of a half show. I'm just excited to be doing it again. And let's get right into answering Daniel's question. And before we get into his optimized self-test answers, I will read the Facebook post, just so you have a little bit more background on Daniel. It says, hello, weak SOAS. Hello. I've been dealing with back and hip issues for a very long time, SLR failure, etc. Now only mild stiffness when side bending, tight overused quadriceps and lower back, feeling no or little connection between upper or lower body when lifting weights, parentheses, Olympic lifting. Been trying a lot of mobility fixes, trigger point work, and palpation, always with short-term relief, stretching psoas a lot, short-term relief for a couple of weeks, focusing on strength in transverse abs and static psoas work, in parentheses, rubber band, one knee towards torso, other leg straight, and alternating. When I do these drills, I feel my upper and lower body melt together. No stiffness or pain. Anyone else that has work on activation / strength for the psoas and felt the same kind of thing? Regards, Daniel. And Daniel, of course, I'm going to be sending him a link, and I'll post this in the comments that he posted in the private Facebook group. But maybe you're someone listening, watching, what would the mixture of those words be? Anyways, let's just say listening right now, that you're listening, you're going, you know what, I've struggled with the same or similar problem as Daniel has, to which I would definitely say, hey, listen up, because probably the answers and knowledge that I give today will help you just as much or possibly more than it will help Daniel. So I answered him in here, and I linked to a couple posts, because I definitely think he's on the right track, which is getting, when he does strengthen the hip flexor, especially with that band, pulling one leg towards the torso while extending the other leg out. He says, and I quote, upper and lower body feel like they're melting together. So yeah, I definitely think that, Daniel, you're onto something here. I already posted in the comment below 2 posts I had done back in my thepostureguy.com days. One of them, don't confuse hip flexor weakness for tightness, and the other, short and tight versus long and taut athletic posture types. So if you haven't already done so, go check those out, because like I said, you're definitely on the right path. Now we're going to flip over to Daniel's optimized self-test responses, his answers, because there's a little bit more info in there. And we're going to talk about how, as important as exercise and corrective exercises are for realigning your posture and getting rid of symptoms like Daniel and other people are experiencing, although they are important, they pale in comparison to the 6 other foundations of health, those being breathing, hydration, sleep, nutrition, stress, and movement, not to mention things like your environment and mindset, both of which are forever influencing your pain, posture, and performance. So with that said, let's switch over to, when I say switch over, you're not seeing anything, I'm just moving around windows, his optimized self-test responses. And obviously, if you haven't taken the optimized self-test, you won't know. If I read his answers, you're gonna be going, what the heck is he talking about? So I will read the question I pose to people who take the optimized self-test, and then I'll read back Daniel's answer, so that way hopefully you can follow along easier and benefit from these answers as well. All right, actually, let me grab some water first. Okay, so first question. When it comes to your health, fitness, and or wellness, what is the biggest problem or issue that you struggle with or have in the past? Daniel says, I have coming and going spasms in left lower back, noticeable when doing right side bend. It also feels like my torso / core is weak. I have no contact, maybe you meant contact or connection between upper and lower body when I work out. So a bigger issue is connection between upper and lower body. Really, thus the name of this episode, which is Reconnecting Daniel's Upper and Lower Halves. So no real questions there except for, yeah, I mean, spasm in the left lower back, that's probably a mixture of your QL and maybe possibly spinal rectors. Well, even your lat ties in there too that are just compensating for, maybe what's not going on. Could be in the glutes, could be on the opposite side of the glutes or back muscles, but some type of disparity going on there. We won't concern it too much right now. Let's get a little bit more information. Next question. If you could ask me one question about your health, fitness, and or wellness that you would like for me to answer in an upcoming episode of the Optimized Self Show, what would it be? How do I get, and Daniel says, how do I get my body to function as a unit instead of as now two separate pieces? So this is a good question. And, the answer may seem very overly simplified, but that is, in order to get the body functioning as a unit, you have to actually train it as an entire unit. By which I mean, and we're going to go deeper into this later on in the episode, half episode, I don't know if that's a word or not. By which I mean, as we go through here and the question, the Facebook post that Daniel posted and asked questions, it's very exercise based. And that is one variable that factors into the equation. But we have to remember that exercise it's a part of your life, but it's not your entire life, right? It's part of the equation, but it's not even the biggest integer number. It's part of the recipe, but it's not the main ingredient. For most people, and I know Daniel's answers, because I know I'm looking at his answers very differently, but for most people, they spend about an average of 15 to 20 minutes working out per day. And maybe that's not every day. Maybe that's, 3 or 4 hours throughout 7 days, and then you average it out. But even someone who spends an hour working out per day on average, that's still an hour out of every 24. And that cannot compensate, and you should not expect it to compensate for 23 other hours of suboptimal living. And you have to think of that all those other hours, remember, your body is a stimulus response organism that's responding to stimulus 24/7 without prejudice, which means that it doesn't just accept good stimulus in the form of corrective exercises and then throw out, toss out, or reject negative stimulus, right? If you do corrective exercise, you go, oh, that feels good, but then you sit down for hours on, and your body's going to adapt to the shape and form that you sat it down into, whether it's a sofa or a couch or a desk chair or a chair sitting behind a desk. That being said, it's what you do the majority of the time that matters the most, not your best intentions. So today we're going to answer some exercise questions, but I really want to work on refocusing our attention and taking exercise down off its pedestal, because I think society has, and this is saying nothing bad about exercise, except that I believe we've put it on this pedestal, and a lot of people look at it as the best way, most efficient way, or in some cases, the one and only way to go about improving oneself physically. And that's just not the case. Again, it is an important factor, but I would say out of the 7 foundations of health, breathing, hydration, sleep, nutrition, stress, movement, and exercise, it's actually the least efficient. It has the smallest impact. That doesn't mean it doesn't have an impact. That doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. That doesn't mean that you should not do it, but you should rethink your approach. Most people are putting a lot of either all their eggs or many of their eggs in the basket of exercise. How can I exercise more? How can I exercise better in all this? And what I think we'll come to find here as we go through Daniel's answers, and I'm sure many people answers are exactly the same or similar, is that, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm focusing too much on the exercise part of this equation when I haven't gotten some of the bigger, more important chunks taking care of my life, like breathing or hydration or sleep, and so on and so forth, the other foundations of health. So let's continue and learn a little bit more. Let's see. All right, one more. This is me asking a question on the test. All right, one more. If you can ask another question about health, fitness, wellness, whatever, what would it be? Daniel says, is it, I think what he's trying to ask here, is it my hips that Is it my hips that cause this, hip rotation, a bulging disc, or just postural habits? So rotation is usually, if not almost always, a form of compensation, right? So it's compensating for something else in the body that's dysfunctional. The bulging disc is a symptom of the hip rotation, and that is due to postural habits. Now, people may define postural habits as different things. A habit is just something you routinely do. Well, yes, your posture, everybody has certain postural habits. Do they slouch? Are their shoulders rolled forward? Do they rotate one side, maybe because they're left or right-handed? Sure. But usually postural habits are formed. In this case, we're talking about postural dysfunctions and compensations. Well, dysfunctions happen from within out, compensations happen from outside within. I mean that physically to the body. So the reason you're having hip rotation, which is then causing the bulging disc, probably in combination with some other postural misalignment, whether it be dysfunction or compensation. I don't have enough information to declare one way or another which it is, but let's not get hung up on that. Is that, yes, something in your body is not working the way it should be. That's a dysfunction. As a result of that, your body, being as smart as it is, will compensate. In this way, going off the information that I have here, it rotates your hips. That way you can still stay mobile. Yeah, maybe a side effect of you still being upright and mobile is that you have a bulging disc and you have lower back pain and things like that, which sucks and it's unfortunate. Of course, we want to eliminate it. But imagine the contrary. I always tell people that it's kind of, looking at things, glass half full. But really, if our bodies weren't able to compensate, if we weren't able to rotate our hips and bulge disc and do all these other things, every time you stubbed your toe, instead of cursing and then like limping around for a while until it felt better, imagine you would just be paralyzed until the toe felt better and you can bear weight on it. Yeah, think of how inconvenient that would be. But no, instead you can limp around for a little bit depending on how bad the stub toe was. And usually within a matter of seconds or minutes, you're back to your normal self walking around, unless it's like a broken toe or something, in which case you may be limping longer and longer and it may be uncomfortable or inconvenient, but you're able to still move about. How awesome is that? I think it's just something we take for granted as humans. And I go, imagine if you saw a building, just get up off its foundation, start walking around. That would be a sight, to behold, like, oh my gosh. Well, honestly, that's how I think about it when I see people who, they have flexed spines and rotated hips and all these other postural misalignments, but they still are moving around. And I'm like, wow, they're just giving a giant FU to gravity and they are just making it happen. Twist a little bit here, elevate a hip over here, do this over here, and they're making it work. Yeah, they may hurt. They may not be very efficient in their movement and their functionality, but they're getting it done. So yeah, the body is an amazing thing. Let's see. All right, now we're going to get into questions about each of the foundations of health, and this is going to be really eye-opening. So Daniel, I hope if you're listening, this is really where to tune in and pay attention. Same thing for everybody else. And this is will kind of answer some of the questions that came before about working the body as an entire unit, connecting the upper lower body and all that. So, and actually I'm gonna grab some water before I do. Okay. So how often do you practice any forms of meditation and or conscious, ideally diaphragmatic breathing? That's me asking Daniel on the test. And Daniel says never. So Daniel, why do I think something like that would be important? And I don't mean necessarily you have to sit around and meditate and that kind of thing, although for some people that totally does it for them, more power to you. I'm just simply talking about, are you breathing efficiently? Are you breathing the way that you were originally designed to, which is with your diaphragm? And for those people who are going, what's the diaphragm? Or I've heard about it, but I'm not quite sure where it is. It basically goes from under your rib cage, kind of in a dome shape down your sides, and actually ties into your lower back, your psoas muscles, your pelvic floor. It's your primary breathing muscle, okay? It's kind of piston shaped, it draws air in and all that. That's what you should be breathing with. But most people are not. And there's very many reasons why. I seem to see that change happen around when people start becoming teenagers. So there's many reasons there. self-consciousness, about vanity, and just things like that, both in boys and girls as they start to grow up into men and women, mental, emotional reasons. Sometimes they've had some trauma, some injury. I don't mean like abuse, although that could definitely be a part of it. But I literally mean like maybe they had a fall and they hit a nerve, and that kind of disrupted the signal between their brain, their central nervous system, and that diaphragm. Also posture related. A lot of times there is a, maybe not causation, but correlation between those people that have asymmetric shoulders, which basically just means something is different from the left shoulder to the right. Maybe one shoulder is higher, lower than the other. The shoulder blade is tilted or pushed out or in more or less than the other side. Just basically there's something different left to right. And usually when we unlock that, that's kind of an unlocking mechanism to re-engage that proper breathing mechanics using the diaphragm. So where does breathing tie in here with Daniel? Well, he mentions trying to connect the upper and lower body. Well, what sits right between the upper and lower body is what most people consider the core. Let's just call it the torso, because in my mind, the core is from the tip of your toes to the tip of your hair. It's everything. The middle of you is not any more important than the bottom or half of or upper portions of you. But Daniel's right in that it is what sits between the upper and lower halves, and it's kind of that connecting point. Well, if you're not breathing with your diaphragm, okay, that kind of shuts it down, or at least it diminishes its capability of doing its function. Also, take into consideration that even a relatively sedentary person is taking, on average, 22 to 30,000 breaths per day, depending on what type of shape and health they're in, the rate, the speed at which they breathe, but 22 to 30,000 breaths per day. Well, that should be 22 to 30 times that your abdomen should not only extend out, but really more so should span laterally, east to west, as well as behind you, in your lower back. So if you imagine blowing a balloon up in your hands and the balloon expanding in your hands and your hands being pushed out to the sides, that's how your diaphragm should work when you inhale. And then when you exhale, just like that balloon would shrink and your hands come closer to get together, again, that's what should be happening 22 to 30,000 times per day in that kind of cavity, your pelvic floor and your lower back attached to your psoas. So if you're not breathing with your diaphragm, that's 22 to 30,000 missed opportunities you're having to direct more blood and oxygen to those areas of the body, and also to contract and release those areas of the body, right? If you're breathing like that, you're almost doing 22 to 30,000 tiny cats and dogs to your lower back. And you're almost doing like an inside out, like an internal massage for your lower back, which I know Daniel said he suffers from left low back pain, and noticeable when doing right side bend. So that types of things like in the QL, spinal erectors, all that, getting back to that diaphragmatic breathing would be really be helpful, as well as, let's see, there's that other part. Oh, and if you're not breathing with your diaphragm, then what's happening is the breath, you're going to start compensating by breathing with your secondary or your auxiliary breathing muscles, which are up in your chest, shoulders, trap, neck area, right? You're going to do more kind of shoulder breathing. And I don't know, I don't think Daniel mentioned anything about tight shoulders or necks or kind of trapezius areas, but a lot of people say, that's where they hold a lot of their stress. Well, yeah, if you're not breathing with your diaphragm, think about it. You're doing 22 to 30,000 tiny shoulder shrugs each day with the weight of your arms. No wonder your traps, your neck, that area, kind of your upper back, are so tight and sore, right? I mean, if you went and picked up 5-pound weights, even though they're really small at the gym, but did 22 to 30,000 repetitions, you'd be like, well, this wasn't light at the beginning, but wow, now they're heavy and they're really sore, and this is kind of actually hurts. Well, that's what you're doing. So what I recommend, and Daniel has access to this in the Optimize Self Dojo. It's a module on optimizing your breathing. You can check it out there. But is you have to jumpstart that proper breathing mechanics. And the best way to do that is to spend 15 minutes per day. It doesn't have to be all at once. Actually, I would usually advise against it. Break it up into like 5 minutes morning, 5 minutes middle of the day, 5 minutes evening, spending 5 minutes at a time, consciously breathing from your diaphragm. And here's what you can do to do that. Number one, close your mouth. You don't have to like shut it hard, but just keep your lips together. No breathing through the mouth. Breathe in and out through the nose. Okay, that'll help kind of direct the air more towards the diaphragm. And again, think about breathing east to west. So put your hands right above your pelvic bones, right above your iliac crest. So basically, if you do a Superman pose, or for any ladies listening, a Wonder Woman pose, and right above the bony crest, right where there's no more bone, and then it gets kind of softer for some more than others, granted, but right there. That's where you should kind of make a C shape with your thumb and forefinger, your pointer finger, wrapped around there. And when you inhale, you should feel your sides and even a little bit in your kind of lower back and obliques and sides. You should feel that expand into your hands and kind of push your hands outward. And then when you exhale through your nose, you should feel that shrink and move more towards the center, towards your spine. Okay. And you can do this standing, you can do this sitting, but one of the best ways, the most comfortable ways people notice this is in static back position, which is simply lying on your back with your legs bent at a 90-degree angle. So maybe up on a chair, ottoman, 18 to 20 inches high. And basically your ankles, knees, hips, shoulders are on alignment. Your arms are out at roughly 90 to 45-degree angle out from your shoulders and torso, palms up, and you just relax there. So you're just lying on the ground with your legs up on a chair or ottoman with your knees bent at a 90-degree angle. And that's a really good, comfortable position to practice the diaphragmatic breathing. Now, go a lot deeper and wider in the optimizing your breathing module. So Daniel, and especially anyone else who is inside as a dojo member, check that out because there's a lot more detail in there. All right, so that's what I'd recommend for the breathing. Why breathing is so important for reconnecting that upper and lower body. I mean, you talk about, you even mentioned in your post on Facebook and in your answers, something like the psoas and tight lower back. Well, the diaphragm ties literally right into that musculature as well as your entire pelvic floor. So it's a big deal. All right. Let's see, next question. Now we're getting into water, hydration. How much do you weigh? 204. How many ounces of water do you drink per day? Don't know. So Daniel, the reason I ask these questions, anyone else wondering too, is that hydration is key. There is I can't even think of any right now, bodily functions, even muscular contractions. You talk about Olympic weightlifting. Well, your body utilizes water in order to contract the muscles, whether you're squatting 800 pounds, leg pressing 1,000, benching 300, 400, whatever, or even just clicking the mouse to play this video. It took water to do that. You want to burn fat? It takes water to do that. You want to think and problem solve? It takes water to do that. And so here's the thing is you mentioned doing mobility fixes, trigger points, palpation, which maybe you're thinking like a deep tissue massage and all that, stretching. Well, here's the problem with that and why all of that is only going to give you short-term results, like you mentioned, is because your musculature, your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments, your myofascia, all your tissues are dehydrated. And what is dehydrated muscle, right? We've all probably eaten it before. I'm not saying cannibalize, hopefully not. Hope we don't have any cannibals in the dojo. But no, I'm talking about beef jerky, right? We've all bought beef jerky from the store. We've eaten it. And you ever try to manipulate or massage or stretch beef jerky? Either one or two things happen. And yes, I'm speaking from personal experience. I buy beef jerky and I try to massage and manipulate it. That sounds really weird. But one or two things happen. Number one is nothing happens. There's no change. Or number two, as you're trying to stretch it, it rips and tears. And I know you don't want those things to happen to you. And I'm sure anybody else other than Daniel listening doesn't want that for themselves either. So it's imperative that you rehydrate, maybe you even superhydrate temporarily, right? You overcompensate and rehydrate that beef jerky back to the nice supple filet mignon that it once was, so that it's more supple, it's more adaptable to any of the stimuli that you feed it in form in way of mobility fixes, mobilization techniques, mobility fixes, self-myofascial release and active release, deep tissue, stretching, strengthening, all of that. It's all going to work better and be more permanent when your tissues are properly hydrated. So that's why hydration is so vital to getting the results that you want and keeping them. Okay, so you want to be shooting for a bare minimum of half your body weight, 8 ounces of water per day. Okay, so start that as a base. Now, granted, this is a lot of times people are like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of water. I'm like, yeah, if you're drinking it all in 1 or 2 sittings, but factor it into spread it out over all the hours that you're awake. For most people, that comes out to be like 2 or 3 gulps of water every 30 minutes. It's not that bad. The other thing you have to think about is if you're consuming alcohol or caffeinated beverages of any sort, those things will dehydrate you. So you want to offset that by drinking twice as much water. So if you have a cup of coffee, which I do have most days, not every day, but most days, drink 2 cups of water. If you have a glass of wine, drink 2 cups or 2 glasses of water, okay? On days that you work out, because you mentioned Olympic lifting, I don't know how much you're doing currently right now, make sure to drink more to offset, what you perspire. There's a really good iOS app called Quench, which will help you figure out how much you lose in perspiration. So check that out, Quench, in the iOS App Store. I'm sure there's a similar one for Android and or Windows. I just don't know them. And Waterlogged. Waterlogged is a good water tracking app and generally speaking, I use it almost every day. Quench, though, is one more specifically for athletes to figure out what you lost drinking wise in a workout, what you perspired. And then also if there's any days that you have to give speeches, I record a lot of videos. As you can tell, I talk a lot. You lose moisture when you talk. So if you have a job that requires you to, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a professional speaker, maybe you make YouTube videos, I don't know, you definitely have to drink more water then, okay? Now, it's not just about drinking water, because a lot of people are starting to come to the realization, you know what, I need to drink more water. But it's not just about what you drink, it's about what you absorb. And most people's either are having insufficient or unbalanced minerals and electrolytes in their body to properly absorb the water they take in. So this brings us to our next question. How much and what kind of salt do you consume? Daniel says, don't know. So I would recommend pink Himalayan sea salt or Celtic sea salt. The reason I would say pink Himalayan first is just the source is cleaner, but either is fine, and both you can find in most grocery stores. And sprinkle it pretty much on everything to taste. Don't worry, really, unless you get up to, I think it's like 6+ teaspoons, you're not going to OD. The whole thing about cholesterol and blood pressure and all that stuff, the negative stuff with salt, I've never seen it myself or anybody else. It's more so just kind of a fear factor, scare tactic, whatever. Salt, not to be confused with sodium, is very much necessary for a lot of functions in the body. So, and if you use too much, your taste buds will let you know. Your body's pretty smart that way. So I sprinkle it pretty aggressively, some might say, on almost all my food. Every 2 months when I take a break off of caffeine, off of coffee, sometimes in the morning, I'll actually have a mug or a cup of coffee with a teaspoon of salt mixed in, and I drink that over about 20 to 30 minutes. I just kind of sip it, and yeah, it's great for resynthesizing the adrenals and just making sure the salt acts as a shuttle, kind of a taxi, an Uber, but basically it shuttles the water to the parts of your body that need it the most. So salt is very important to making sure that you absorb the extra water that you consume. All right. And there's more on this in the Optimizing Your Hydration module. So make sure to check that out. Let's see. Now we're moving on to sleep. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, how would you rate the quality of your sleep? And Daniel says 7. So that's pretty good from 10. How many hours on average do you sleep per night? 6. So, I would say on average 6 to 9. Adults usually need 6 to 9. So 6 is good, but I would say, I always tell people, quality of sleep is better than quantity of sleep. So you're better off having 6 hours of quality sleep over 9 hours of poor quality sleep. Sorry, dog's making noise in the background. What was I going to say? So, if you feel rested, Daniel, after 6 hours of sleep, great. If not, try to maybe get in some 15, 20-minute naps during the day, or improve the quality of your sleep from a 7 more to an 8, 9, or dare I say 10. And that will, there's a couple things you can do for that. You can cool down the temperature of your room to about 66 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. You can use things like a chili pad on your bed, which is like a little thermostat type of cover for the top of your bed. You can just have one bare foot outside of the covers. That'll bring your overall body temperature down. You can also try making your room very, very dark if it isn't already. Blackout shades, make sure there's no glowing lights or alarms anywhere, and also using a face mask of sorts to block out any light from your eyes, because the body, especially the eyes, but elsewhere, are very sensitive to the light. Excuse me 1 second. I just have to get my wife to take care of the dog while I record. This is live recording, everybody. Hold on 1 second. Keep her up. I keep on recording. Just one second, please. Keep her up. I'm recording. Well, I said wanted more live and living room style, and that's what it is. So apologies for that little break, Daniel. Good thing it's a half episode, right? Not a full episode. They don't count. No, I'm kidding. So let's get back to sleep. We talked about temperature. We talked about light. Also, you can spend some part of that 50 minutes that we talked about earlier to practice that conscious diaphragmatic breathing. Do it immediately before going to bed. In that static back position that I mentioned, I'll try to remember to link to it in the show notes over on YouTube, and I'll link to the static back position, and do that immediately before getting to bed. That way, you're bringing a better aligned body with you to bed, because most people don't think of sleeping as an activity, but it actually is. You're putting your body in position for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, however long you sleep. And so that will help bringing a better aligned body to bed. The other thing you can do is, while you're there, practice breathing with a 1 to 2 inhale to exhale ratio. And what that'll do, so for example, 3 seconds in through the nose, 6 seconds out through the nose. And that'll help calm your central nervous system so that you can fall asleep quicker and get better quality of sleep. All right. Something else, and I just thought of this, and I haven't really mentioned this in a while, is try to your final meal of the day. That's when you should load up on your fats, ideally healthy fats, right? And carbs. If you feel like you need a little bit of glucose for your to sustain your brain through the night, you can have a teaspoon or 2 of raw, ideally local, but definitely make sure it's raw honey. All right, and that will improve the quality. Now, another way you can improve the quality is the position you sleep in, and that's the next question I asked, which is, what position do you usually sleep in? Daniel says sides. Here's the issue I have with sides. Can it be improved upon by putting, pillow between the knees and 2 pillows under the head and other pillows elsewhere and getting to some crazy configurations? Yes, but still asymmetrical, meaning that gravity is working on you unevenly because you're inherently on one side, right? It's like tennis or ping pong, or any game where you're throwing and you do it always with the same side. That's going to breed imbalance, right? So what I would recommend is try to start sleeping on your back. And I know this is a tough lifestyle habit to change. Here's how I'd recommend going about it, is sleeping on your back with either 0 to 1 pillows under your head. Ideally, you want to get to 0 or 1 very thin one so that when you're sleeping, your ear is in line with your shoulder, okay? And then placing 1 to 2 pillows under your lower legs and knee. And what that'll do is put a little bend in the knee, and that'll put a little bend in your hip and put your pelvis in a more neutral position, similar to the static back position, and unload your lower back. All right. And that should be comfortable there. If you find yourself, for some people, that's fine. That like they just, oh wow, this is really comfortable. And if you think about it now, instead of spending 6 hours on your side practicing, I know you're not doing it consciously, you're doing it very unconsciously because you're unconscious, you're asleep. Uh, Instead of practicing those 6 hours sleeping on one side, which is definitely going to breed postural asymmetries and misalignments and then compensations, and you know what comes from that, back pain and all that stuff. Instead of that, you're going to be practicing 6 or more hours on your back in a symmetrical position. All right. Now, like I said, for most people, 0 to 1 pillows under the head, 1 or 2 pillows on the legs, they're fine with that. But some people will say, Justin, I go to sleep on my back, I feel good, but then I wake up on my sides. What do I do? Use another 1 or 2 pillows under the legs. And what's happening is in the middle of the night, you wake up, and yes, out of habit, you just want to roll over to your side. But if you have enough pillows, the weight of your legs will make kind of a V-shaped funnel, and they'll act as bolsters to left or right, so that it will be near impossible to, in your sleep, roll over on your side. I mean, you would actually have to fully wake up, make a huge effort to roll over on your sides, because the pillows to the left and to the right of your knees and lower legs will keep you from rolling over like that. All right, so that should help with the sleeping. And now let's move on to diet, but let me grab some water real quick. In case somebody's wondering what that silence was, unfortunately, our puppy threw up a little bit on the carpet. So I should put that in the show notes, you know, like dog throws up in the background. Mm-hmm. Carmen just came up, our dog, and she's like, no, please don't do that. Which is now a perfect time to talk about food. So the next question is, do you eat any of the following foods on a daily, weekly basis? And then on the Optimized Self test is a list of 7 of the most common high inflammatory foods that people have intolerances and or sensitivities to. This is not to be confused with allergies. Like some people with peanuts if they're allergic to peanuts and it touches their lips or their tongue, their face swells up. That's more of an acute reaction. Intolerances and sensitivities have more low level but systemic, meaning overall throughout the body, inflammation. They can manifest themselves in different ways. It could be joint pain, it could be muscle pain, stiffness, just lower energy, skin issues, rashes, bumps, what else? Digestive problems, a declining cognitive performance. I mean, there's a laundry list of symptoms that it would take us all day to go through. But that's why I ask about these foods. And 3 of which that Daniel chose from the list is gluten, dairy, and eggs. And so what I would recommend for Daniel and anyone else is to utilize what's known as an elimination diet. And let me make sure it's clear. An elimination is not a lifestyle diet. It's not something you do forever. It's something you do for, on average, 2 to 3 months to figure out which foods your body tolerates, which ones it thrives on, and which ones are basically poison to you, almost kind of like how kryptonite is to Superman. So that way you can eliminate those foods from you, so you can stop poisoning yourself, and then you can eat more of the foods that that make you feel good, you know. But here's the thing: is most people, if you ask, "Hey, are you okay with this food?" Most people don't know what you mean by "Are you okay?" Meaning, do you tolerate these foods? And a lot of times, I'll ask, you know, "Hey, do you have any sensitivities or intolerances?" And people don't really know what that means, and they'll say, "No, I'm okay with that food." And to which I always respond, and Danielle would ask the same: is how do you know what you know? And I mean, I have no reason to not to believe Daniel or anyone else saying I'm okay with these foods. You know, it's most people think a lot of foods, if people ask they have problems with, they think just digestive wise, like does it give them gas or diarrhea, or does it cause them to throw up or have an upset stomach? They don't realize, oh, this could be the cause of my muscle pain, my my arthritis, my, I'm always feeling tired all the time and run down, and I can't fully, have clear thoughts and everything. So a lot of people don't know that these foods can affect them in that way. And the thing is, your body does build up a certain, not adherence, like a certain tolerance to them, but it still is your poison yourself. So the best way to do is to go off of all the foods for about 3 to 4 weeks and then reintroduce them one at a time. That's kind of what, in a nutshell, the elimination diet is. And along with something like a food journal or the Coca Pulse test, or you can use like a blood test like Leap MRT if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty and also maybe identify some of the outliers, those that aren't those 7 common high inflammatory foods, and see which ones you're okay eating. And until you do one or more of those things, those tests, I always like to do 2, right? It's kind of like having a first opinion and a second opinion. Just assume you are intolerant to or sensitive to those foods, because I've seen many people go, no, I'm fine. And then finally they're like, I've tried everything. I can't figure out why I feel like this, why I have these symptoms. And then it's like, oh, is that food that all this time you thought you were fine on? So I tell people, don't assume. A lot of time those assumptions, those preconceived notions get you into trouble. I would say assume the opposite, just as cheap fire insurance. Assume you are. And what this assumption is based off of is not just my opinion, but science, statistics, as well as, yes, just my experience working with people, as well as other health professionals, especially dietitians, working with a lot of people and finding that these foods are the ones that in most people are causing a lot of their symptoms. So I go a lot deeper and wider into this in the optimizing your nutrition module. But Daniel, definitely take a look at using elimination diet to see if you actually do in fact tolerate gluten, dairy, and eggs, as well as the 4 other high inflammatory foods. All right. Let's see. Now we get into stress. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being stressed out, how would you rate your stress level? And Daniel says a 6. So that's a little better, right, than 50%, halfway there. Stress is one of those things I think is overlooked a lot, but it's important to remember that 90% of doctor visits are stress related in some way or form. And this is definitely a lifestyle thing, and it's kind of maybe beyond the scope of just today's half episode, I think is what I'll refer to it as, because it has to do with a lot of times relationships to your loved ones, your peers, your coworkers, your job. Do you like what you do for a living? Do you like the people in your life? Do you like the environments that you frequent most often? And also, how do you react to that stress? Because not all stress is bad, right? There's eustress, like working out or sex, or some other forms of stress, which are good. They challenge you and you grow from them. Then there's distress, which is a bad type of stress. And you can do a lot of stuff to eliminate distress. If you have the capability and the freedom to quit a job you do not like, or that causes you distress, then by all means do it. You'll feel much better. I understand not everybody can do that, like that. But even if you eliminate as much stress as you can, there's always going to be some distress there. The good news is that there are ways that you can train yourself on how you respond to that stress. The most well-known is what's known as HRV training, which stands for heart rate variability training. And it's actually using breath through I believe it's called the vagus nerve, to control your central nervous system, and vice versa. So something you can do is, if you're feeling really stressed out, and I know people say, oh, just take a breath, calm down. Well, there's a reason for that. There's literally a scientific connection there. This isn't just like airy-fairy, think calm thoughts. Really breathing, and especially at that 1 to 2 inhale to exhale ratio, in and out through the nose, will really help calm you and help you deal with stress better. There's also other neat breathing tricks. So if you're low on energy, Neil will pick me up. Maybe you're driving home and you're like, wow, I should pull over, or at least get a coffee or a Red Bull or something. Well, instead of doing that, you can actually increase your breathing rate to wake you up. So for example, let's go back to the calming down one, right? Maybe you're really upset at something. Someone just cut you off. A web page didn't load fast enough. You lost some information on a form you were filling out online. You're like, I just spent 15 minutes doing that. Now it's all lost. Well, okay, go ahead, be mad in the moment, but then it's like, are you going to let that negatively affect you for how much longer? Minutes, hours, the rest of your day, the rest of your week? It's like, no, don't let that distress have that power over you. So in that case, what you can do is literally take as little as 3 breaths. You can do more, but as little as 3 breaths can have a significant change on your things like your rest and your heart rate. And I've done this with many different heart rate monitors, some plugged in, some wireless, some on phones, and all of them though show the same thing, which is as little as 3 breaths, you can significantly decrease that resting heart rate, and also you feel better. And that would be that 1 to 2 inhale exhale ratio. Now let's go the opposite. You want to energize yourself, right? So whereas the 1 to 2 that 1 to 2 inhale to exhale ratio would sound something like this. That ding, if you heard that, that was just something on my computer. That's not actually how I breathe. I don't ding or dong when I breathe, but that's how that would sound with the 1 to 2 inhale exhale, 1 to 2 inhale to exhale ratio breathing. The faster one would sound something like this. So let's say take 10 seconds and breathe in and out as fast as you can through your nose. So it sounds something like this. Sounds kind of funny. So and if you can't already tell, that was all through my nose, and instantly you get this rush of energy to your brain. It does actually. You talk about wanting to connect the upper and lower body. That will also both forms of breathing, but especially that one. You'll feel your abdominals, your obliques, everything engage. So that could also be good for reconnecting the upper and lower body, but also just having that control of your breath can definitely change. How you respond to stress in your life. All right. Okay, cool. Now we get into movement. Let me grab some water real quick. Breathing took it out of me. Okay. How many minutes do you spend standing/walking per day? And Daniel says 60 minutes, or otherwise known as 1 hour. Now, in contrast, how many hours do you spend sitting or stagnant per day? And Daniel says 5 hours. So Daniel, I just want you to take notice that you are, and not to pick on Daniel, because there's a lot of people, sometimes even including myself, who are in this same or similar boat scenario in life, where you're sitting and being stagnant a lot more than you're standing and walking. And the problem with that is that exercise, even going to the gym for as much as an hour per day cannot offset something like 8 hours. Even maybe it can start to offset 5, but there's been tons of studies that show that like 8-10 hours can't be outdone by an hour of exercise. So this is a 1 to 5 ratio of standing to sitting, or from walking to being stagnant. So there's a couple things you can do. I didn't care to ask, and this is something I should probably add to the optimized self-test questions, is, Daniel, what do you do for a living? Is there options that you can stand or walk more? Can you work from a standing desk or a leaning desk or a treadmill desk? Can you take certain calls, maybe outside or while walking around using a headset? Can your company or business, I don't know if you work for someone, or if you're self-employed or you have a company, can you do walking meetings or standing meetings? Do you go for regular walks? And I don't mean just on the treadmill, but like outside. If not, I definitely recommend doing so. Those are a couple things you can do to try to stand and walk more in your day. I also, I know it's easier on days when people don't work to try to do this. Try once or twice a week trying to not sit at all for the entire day. So no using chairs, no using couches, ottomans, anything. If you need to sit, you can sit on the ground, you can lean against something, but don't sit at all, and see what a difference that makes. Because a lot of times it's just we sit too much, and it's those positions that we frequent most often, and it's the sitting apparatus, the chair, the couch, the ottoman, whatever, that really forms that function that causes our form, and form follows function. So that's another couple of things to keep in mind. And I'm going to put a couple links in these show notes. One called How Should You Be Standing for when you're standing, How Should You Be Walking for when you're walking, and How Should You Be Sitting for the times when you need to be sitting. I should also probably, yeah, I'll put those. I might put one other pain for your PC. I don't know if you spend a lot of time at the computer, but let's be honest, most of us do nowadays. So that would probably be a good one to add in there as well. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about that. Okay, so let's move on to exercise and working out, and I'm going to kind of actually come back a little bit to movement since we're talking about exercise. So, how many times per week do you work out? Daniel says 5. How long do you work out for? 90 minutes, and I believe Daniel said he does some type of Olympic lifting. So I'm wondering, Daniel, if it's more Olympic lifting, but still mixed with kind of bodybuilding style, because I know I've done both bodybuilding type of training and strength training. Usually the strength training wasn't as long of a workouts. I mean, I think very rarely, if at all, in bodybuilding or strength training did I ever spend more than an hour in the gym. I'm actually really kind of thinking back and playing back memories, and I can't really think of it. I mean, every once in a while I did 2-a-day workouts, but they were like half an hour. So combined, it was still an hour, at the gym. So here's the thing about exercise. And I said earlier, talking about why exercise isn't a substitute for movement and lifestyle, and that we're going to be kind of, I want to take down exercise off of its pedestal. Not to poo-poo over exercise, not to badmouth it. It's important. I love exercise. Like I said, I used to do amateur bodybuilding. I used to do strictly postural alignment therapy. I can geek out over anatomy, kinesiology, physiology, exercise, corrective exercises, strength training, bodybuilding, all of that. I love it. But with that said, what I found is that, too much emphasis is put on exercise and not on the other 6 foundations of health. And by now, we've kind of covered why those other foundations of health are more important. But here's another way to think about it, is ask yourself, how much of my day consists of, and then put in a blank there, put each of those foundations about, how much of my day consists of breathing? Well, that's kind of a rhetorical question. 24 hours of every day does, right? Otherwise, you have bigger problems. You're not alive, which hopefully is not the case. Or if you are, you're watching this YouTube video from the great beyond. So ask each one of those for hydration, sleep, nutrition, stress, et cetera, et cetera. And something like hydration, not just how often are you drinking water every day, but how much of what your body does, each of the functions, is dependent on your hydration. And like we talked about, pretty much all of them are, So just ask yourself, and what people then, when they look at it from that perspective, start to realize is, you know what? Yeah, I don't spend, compared to the rest of my life, that much time exercising. Yeah, no one does. Nothing to take personally, just compared to breathing, hydration, sleep, nutrition, stress, movement, nobody spends more time exercise than doing those things, even professional athletes. So they cannot have as big of an impact on your life as the other foundations of health. So you're working out 5 times per week, 90 minutes at a time. And the other thing I would ask is, and I think it's by the Facebook post here, kind of Olympic weightlifting. So I would also ask the question is, how efficient are your workouts? Meaning, what is the purpose? What are you there to do in your workouts? What is the effect, their end result you're trying to get? And can it be done more efficiently? Because if you can get the same results or better results in 60 minutes or 45 minutes or 30 minutes, and I think you can probably get it done in less than 30 minutes, like 20, 25 maybe, then your efficiency goes up. Understand that exercise is catabolic by nature. Any exercise, running, weight training, Olympic lifting, all that, it breaks down muscle. It's then what you do outside of the gym not only what you eat, but you rest and your breathing, your hydration, all that, that determines how much you're going to grow due to the stimulus that you fed your body, which is the exercise. The exercise is the stressor, right? It triggers, ideally, if you rest appropriately, your growth. And take it from someone who learned this the hard way, because I used to do bodybuilding, and this is before I knew what I know now, is you also always want to straighten before you strengthen. Because if you're trying to strengthen your body and your body's out of alignment, like you said, hip rotation and everything, I forget if you mentioned other specific postural misalignments. We talked about psoas and everything. That's what I have to come back to on movement. But something like rotated hips, right? Well, if you squat or you do anything to the body to strengthen it, guess what? If the hip rotation is there, you're going to be strengthening that rotation. You're going to be making the rotation worse and therefore causing your bulging disc to be worse. So it's important to straighten that out before. Now, before I forget, I do want to go back to the movement area and saying that no quantity nor quality of exercise is a compensation for movement or lifestyle. Well, here's the thing. You said you're sitting on average 5 hours per day. Well, and you mentioned, in the Facebook post what's going on with your psoas, and that it feels like your upper and lower body kind of melt together after you re-engage it. And that's good. I definitely recommend. Don't stretch the psoas, because from the sound of your description, your psoas is long and taut, not short and tight. But stretching it gives it temporary relief. But probably what it needs actually more than anything is it needs to be toned up. It needs to be strengthened. And so that's number one. The other is that due to sitting for too long of a time, what happens is the femur bone, the thigh bone inside the hip socket, gets pushed towards the front of the hip, and it causes an impingement in the front of the hip socket, and usually with it, it takes the psoas. So if you sit down in a chair, don't get this into a habit, but if you do it now, think about it. If you're sitting on a chair, okay, gravity is acting down on you. And if your butt and your thighs are on the chair, that means that your thigh bones and your hip socket are being pushed up, right? Gravity's going down, the chair is opposition, it's pushing the thigh bones up, which basically, if you stand up, that's the front of your hip socket. Well, what should happen is when you squat down, your femur in your thigh bone should move towards the back of the hip socket. It should be posterior glide, basically towards your butt. But if you have been sitting for too long, then what happens, number one, is your upper hamstrings and your gluteal muscles get kind of laminated and pressed down, and there's not kind of room for it to go back. Then it actually stays toward, by it I mean the head of your femur stays towards the front of your hip socket. And so as you go into flexion, instead of it going back, it stays put or even moves forward, and you have that impingement, ouch. And also it pushes on the front of your psoas muscle. And another way to kind of visualize that is if you take your shirt and take your right hand and kind of stretch it out, okay? Then put your left fist under the shirt and then push it forward, right? And now your shirt went from tight to really tight because you're pushing the fist forward. And that's basically what's happening with the head of the femur. It's pushing forward on the hip socket. So it feels like it needs to stretch, when really what it needs is to be fed some slack by strengthening it, and also getting that the femur to glide posteriorly towards the back of the hip socket. It's just sitting too far forward. And a big contributor to that is for sitting for too long a period, because like I said, number one, that laminates the glutes and hamstrings, which some self-myofascial release techniques, like taking a baseball or a lacrosse ball, and if you don't have those, you can use a foam roller, but I usually find something like a lacrosse ball or something like that, and rolling around on your glutes and those really tight, stiff areas will help feed some slack there. But then also just rocking. You've been doing some mobility fixes. Daniel, you might be familiar with Kelly Starrett's mobility WODs and his book Supple Leopard, and he shows a couple things in there for getting the femur to glide posteriorly, like kneeling and then kind of rocking back and forth so that the femur gets kind of pushed back towards the back of the hip socket. That one's very useful for that. So again, that's where, not enough moving, you can't necessarily fix by exercising. And think about it this way: movement is to food as exercise is to supplementation. If you think about it, exercise, you should want to fill up on the food and then have supplements to fill in any of the gaps that you're not getting nutrient-wise from your foods, right? You don't fill up on supplements, pills and powders and everything, and then fill in the gaps with grass-fed beef and broccoli and things like that. No. So same thing with movement. Your day-to-day life should provide enough movement that then the exercise is just the filler that you don't get from movement. Now, granted, in modern day times, that's becoming harder and harder because we live in a time that really kind of almost discourages movement, crawling around, hanging from something, overhead, and trees, and tumbling and doing those types of things. So that's why, gyms and trainers in the whole health fitness movement is still relatively young in terms of the history of human beings. If you look back just a few generations ago, there weren't gyms and people weren't caring about fitness because everybody was relatively fit. And if you even go further back, like caveman days, it's like, well, if you weren't fit, then you were dead because you didn't survive. It was pure Darwinism. So yeah, I would try to fill up more on movement in your day-to-day life. Try not to sit as much. Try to move around more. Try to assume different positions. As I would put it, use more of the geometry that is your body. Get into positions that you normally wouldn't get into. Squat, butt to heels. Lay on your side, sit in various different positions, stand in various different positions, so as then you don't need to do as much exercise unless you want to and it's just enjoyable. Okay. Let's see, which actually this is kind of a good follow-up for this next question. How conducive is your environment? Actually, sorry, let me add one more thing to the exercise. If you have addressed, not perfected, but addressed like 80% or above the other foundations of your health, you usually don't need as much exercise as a lot of people have led to believe. I'm talking like 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes at most of exercise per day. And not even every day, maybe like 5-6 days a week. That doesn't mean that you can't gain muscle. That doesn't mean you can't be strong. It's just you're a lot more efficient at it. Those that understand the power of synergy have an unfair advantage over those that don't. And that's the thing, is I hate to see people spinning their wheels with exercise, whether it be strength training exercise or corrective posture exercise to get them out of pain, and them not doing what's necessary to make to make the progress and get the results they want, because they're like, yeah, breathing, hydration, sleep, and all that stuff. Like, yeah, whatever. No, I'm going to exercise more. I'm telling you, I wish it worked. I'm just the messenger of the body. I didn't design it. I'm just saying, hey, here's how it works, and here's how I suggest working with it rather than trying to work against it. So just something to kind of, keep in mind. Okay, so now we covered that. Environment. How conducive is your environment, work, home, peer group, etc., to you achieving your goals? This is on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being ideal, 0 being not very. And Daniel says 5, so right in the middle. Well, it's important to remember that we are the average of who we hang out with, what we read, what we listen to, what we watch, what we do. So that's why I think being a member like Daniel is of the Optimize Self dojo, environment dictates performance and results. So it's important to be in an environment that normalizes the type of results you're after. And the Optimize Self Dojo is ideal for that. I think that's all about it. And the other thing about environment, work and home. If a lot of people say, well, not sitting so much is hard, and I get it because most of the world is designed to sit, right? Anybody invites you over to their home, they say, come on in, have a seat, make yourself at home, get comfortable, and they're trying to be nice. At workplaces, there's seats and everything, and maybe you're in a meeting, you're sitting for a long period of time. Try to, like I said, go for days where where you don't use furniture, and especially sitting type of furniture, or try to at least modify it. I know my wife and I are traveling right now, but next time we settle down, we're gonna have very little, if any, but we'll have some, but very little furniture, especially couches and chairs and stuff. It'll just be, you stand, you kneel. If you need to sit, we'll have little cushions on the ground and everything, but very kind of furniture free, because then the temptation to sit is there. When there's not an option, you'll figure out what to do. If you get tired of standing, you'll sit down on the ground and lean against the wall, or not lean against the wall. There's a lot more options now available to you. So imagine a world without couches and chairs and anything to sit on. What would you do? So again, that's a way that you can modify your environment. Same thing as, hey, I'm trying to go through an elimination diet. I'm trying to get rid of gluten and dairy and eggs temporarily, maybe not forever, but temporarily. Well, it's really hard to, avoid temptation of those foods. That's very true. So you know what? Don't have them in your environment. That's a way that you can modify your environment to make what you're trying to change easier. And also, just so you know, a lot of times the reason that people crave foods is because there's actually an addiction. I always tell people, don't fool yourself. We're all drug addicts. Food is drugs. They actually have drug-like responses in the brain and triggers. So yeah, we're all drug addicts. And so sometimes when you come off a food that you are literally addicted to, you have withdrawal symptoms. But after they pass, you really do not think about them. That's not, you can even put the foods in front of you and you're like, no, that's okay. And you're not saying no as in like in your head having this internal dialogue of like, no, Justin, don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it. No, it's just, it has no power over you. And it's awesome because then you can spend that mental bandwidth on doing something creative or being there for someone else. So just something little tangent I want to go off on for you. Okay, so that's, I think, environment, yada, yada, yada. What is your general mindset? Daniel says hopeful and enthusiastic. Yeah, that sounds good. Hopeful is good. I think it gets people started. Enthusiastic is good. Now it's just, I think, channeling into doing. Maybe first into knowing, which hopefully this video response to Daniel's question, as well as what's also found inside the Optimize Self Dojo, helps with the knowing. But then it's at a certain point in time to start doing. And also I tell people doing, clarity comes from doing, not thinking and continue to thinking. So I look forward to hear, Daniel, as you do, what do you learn along the way? But I think, yeah, being hopeful, enthusiastic are great precursors to the doing. Let's see, is there anything else that you feel / think / believe is contributing to holding you back from being your optimized self? Daniel says, not that I can think of. When everybody answers that to that question, I'm always reminded of that, was this Tony Robbins story, or I won't even say the story, but just a quote, like, and I'm probably butchering this and I'm definitely paraphrasing, but, the world will give you whatever you ask of it. You just have to, I guess, be careful what you ask of it. And about a homeless man that was asking him for money. He just wanted $1, and Tony Robbins says, okay, like, here's $1, but he pulled out and had all the money of like hundreds and stuff like that. And it's like, you sure that's all you want? And basically taught that man that lesson. And it's true. I always say, if you have an opportunity to ask a question, ask it. Try to have it be a good quality question, but even a moderate kind of quality question is better than no question at all. So just something to mull over, to think about. Okay, who holds you accountable and supports you in your health, fitness, wellness endeavors? Daniel says, myself. This is one common answer I get to this question. And let me drink some water and I'll tell you my thoughts on it. A lot of people answer this way because I think they think that it's honorable. It's I hold myself responsible. And I get where they're coming from because I used to think this way too, you know. But here's the thing is holding yourself responsible, although good, it's not worth as much as other people holding you accountable for things. Because I don't know about you, I've held myself accountable for things, and if I didn't achieve it, if I let myself down, I was sad for a little bit. But you know, I mean, really watch a good movie, a favorite TV show, watch a couple of favorite cat videos, play a video game, have sex. I mean, you get over it really, really quickly. It's not that big of a deal. Because you know your mind, you can justify things. Well, the reason I didn't do it because is this. You know, it's not that compelling. But when you're accountable to more people, and this is kind of one of the founding principles of the Optimize Self Dojo, is the built-in accountability and support group. The more people that you're accountable to and that hold you accountable while also simultaneously supporting you in your endeavors, the more likely you are to achieve what it is you're trying to achieve. And that doesn't just go for health, fitness, wellness. That goes for everything. Why do you think there's business masterminds, which yes, I'm a part of? Is because yes, I always hold yourself accountable. That's good, but it's not as strong. It's not as compelling enough as others holding you accountable and supporting you. So there's definitely power in numbers when it comes to accountability. So that's what I have to say about that. Let's see. Do you know about the Optimize Self Dojo? Of course, Daniel does. He's already a member. So hi, Daniel. Welcome to the group. Can't wait to chat with you more. Hopefully you'll join me on maybe one of our weekly hangouts Saturday, every Saturday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can come on, join me live, talk about whatever you want. Let's see. What would you love to see in your inbox from OptimizeSelf.ninja? How to get the body functioning as a unit? Well, pretty much just covered that, and I'll be sending this out as an email. So there you go. And like I said, how to get the body functioning as a unit is you treat it as a unit. You don't just treat it from the biomechanical side, that is to say physically through exercise. You factor in the neurological, the psychological, the environmental and biological aspects of health. And by that I mean, yeah, those 7 foundations of health, one of which is exercise. But you got to zoom out and look at your lifestyle overall and just keep reminding yourself. And this is probably the number one thing I'm trying to get across to people more than ever, is that, and I'll say it one more time, I know I'm repeating myself, but that's fine. The human body is a stimulus response organism that's responding to stimulus 24/7 without prejudice. So it's what you do the majority of the time that matters the most, not your best intentions. So, Daniel, you're spending 90 minutes, 5 days out of every week. That's great. But what are you doing the rest of the time? Obviously that makes up a bigger chunk of your life. Focus on those things. Don't forget, negate, ignore exercise. That's not what I'm saying. But just think about how you're doing in those other areas of life and what you could be doing better. Because like I said, those that understand the synergistic power of doing each of those things better, you have an unfair advantage over those that don't. You're going to also, the results yielded from the time and effort you put into exercise are going to be much, much more. I always ask people, in terms of exercise, how often do you work out? How long? At what's intensity? But what is it that makes you believe that you have the capacity to do that exercise? Because I'm actually finding, and more times than not, people are either overtraining or overreaching, and there's a difference. But yeah, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I have to work out because that's just how you do it. And it's like, no, it isn't. That's one way to go about it. It's definitely not even the most efficient way of going about it. Look at these other alternatives. Look at these other areas of life that you can focus your attention on improving, so that way you can get more out of the time and energy you put into your workouts. And that's basically kind of the the overall premise here is I just don't want to see Daniel or anyone not get the results that they want out of exercise because they've ignored or overlooked or don't know that, hey, these other parts of life matter more. All right. And let's see. Oh, there was one more thing about working the body as a unit. There was something about tying the body together. It was earlier on, and I overlooked it, but I'll remember this right now. Daniel, something you can do to tie the upper and lower body together besides doing the hip flexor work that you already mentioned. I told you about the in Facebook, I told you about the don't confuse hip flexor weakness for tightness and short and tight versus long and taut athletic posture types. Some kind of resets you can do to reconnect the upper and lower body is just kind of functional, natural development movements. And if that sounds like childhood development, that's exactly kind of what it is. Think about when you were a child, the things that you did to get to the point where you can walk. All right. And I would say definitely things that reconnect the upper and lower half are things like rocking, where literally you're on your hands and knees rocking back and forth. If you have any nephews or nieces, or if you have kids yourself, I'm sure you know, or if we've all seen kids, right? You've seen that before they can crawl, they start doing this kind of rocking thing, and it looks like they're kind of rocking out. They, their butt goes towards their heels, and it comes up, and they're putting the weight over their arms and shoulders and wrist, and they're doing that type of thing. Well, you can do that as well, and then you can actually start crawling on your hands and knees, basically just like a child. Keep your head up, your chest kind of up, looking so you can see around. Crawl around for a few minutes. Then, when you get better at that, pick your knees up off the ground and crawl around like a bear. And that opposite arm, opposite leg type of movement will definitely trigger what most people would consider your core, your torso, the middle of you, and help connect the upper and lower halves. So rocking and various forms of crawling are very good at connecting the upper and lower half, as long as the work that you're already doing, and I suggested you do on your hip flexor. So keep that up. And I think the only other question left was, have you shared optimizeself.ninja with a friend and family member or someone you care about? Daniel says no, but I promise I will. Yeah, definitely. Spread the word, share the love, pass it on. That's part of being a optimized self sensei. Eventually is you learn it, you live it, and then you give it, you pass it on, you share it with others. And if you know anyone who is thinking about joining, tell them they may want to. I don't want to be pushy with the sales, but I will just say get in sooner rather than later, because really, as soon as I can, I'm switching over. Basically, as soon as I work out the technicalities, the techie stuff in the background, switching over from a one-time fee, which it is now. I think right now the price is $35. Each membership goes up $5 from there. So the next one will be $40, then $45, $50. But they're one-time payments. You pay once and you'll never pay anymore. You get access to it forever. All the updates, version 2.0, 3.0, all that. You get free access to the group, everything. But eventually, and here pretty soon, probably the next week or two, I will be making a switch over to not monthly, but reoccurring subscription type of pricing model. And that'll there'll be a quarterly, biannual, and annual memberships, and they'll range, they'll be anywhere from $20 to $30 a month, which is still a good deal when you consider everything that's included. But, I love giving people good deals. I love giving people crazy good deals. And right now it's a crazy good deal. So before that switches to a recurring subscription type of pricing model, if you know anyone who's kind of on the fence, tell them to come on down off the fence, pick the splinters out of their butt and join, because they'll save a buttload of money, and they'll get to be, on your team and help hold you accountable. You can hold them accountable. You can support one another. And as I always say, it's in everybody's best interest of the dojo to recruit members, because another founding principle is that it's a place where like-minded people can meet, and we're crowdsourcing all of our collective time, knowledge, and experience for each other to leverage off of, so that we can more efficiently solve one another's problems, right? So that's why, like I said, with every member that joins, the value goes up exponentially, because it's not just a hierarchy. It's not just about what I have to say. It's about the group overall. And with every new member that comes in, you get to tap in to that individual's unique time, knowledge, and experience. All right. So I think that's about it. This has been a fun, like I said, kind of half episode, and I will post this up in just a little bit. Daniel, I will send you a link to this, and yeah, and for any other dojo members who are listening, tomorrow, Saturday, what is the date? June 27th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have a hangout that we're doing about how to go from being an optimized self ninja / ninjette to a sensei. So please join us for that. You can find a link to it in the events tab. And I think that's about it. This has been fun. I haven't done a show recording in a while. I've been working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes, emails, stuff like that. A lot of thinking, a lot of problem solving, a lot of moving puzzle pieces around. It's been a lot of fun, but I miss this. So hopefully in another week or two, I'll put out actual episode 45, not a 45, not a 44 and like 3/4 or 7/8 or something like that. Although that'd be funny. Anyways, Daniel, I hope you got a lot of help from this. Apologies for taking so long to get back to you. I hope other people in the same or similar situation as Daniel also benefited from this. And I will see you all inside the next episode of the Optimize Self Show. And as always, if you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe over on youtube.com/optimize self ninja. All right. See you guys in the next episode. Until then, take care and be a good human.